Welcome to the Evolution Exchange podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Thompson. On today's episode of my LGBTQIA plus tech podcast series, we are tackling a topic that resonates across the LGBT community and really anyone who's ever doubted their abilities or felt like they truly didn't belong, imposter syndrome. Joining me on my first ever in-person podcast are three remarkable tech leaders who all identify as LGBTQ and have not only confronted imposter syndrome head-on in their own careers, but are championing greater representation and creating more inclusive environments. First up, we have Afqad.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Afqad, a little introduction about myself. I am currently responsible. I'm working in Siemens in the smart infrastructure, electrification, and automation business. I had two functions, two departments. I'm the head of Group Project Management Office and the tendering, and I covered the UK and Ireland regions. And in the DI capacity, I'm the chair of the Pride Network for whole UK and Ireland, and an active member of the Global Pride community for Siemens. So that's a good point myself.
Yeah, if you go next slide.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at NorthCoders. We are a tech training bootcamp, effectively, so we can hopefully help solve some of the recruitment problems that we were talking about earlier. We've been around for about 7 years now. That's how long I've been there. Yeah, more than 3,000 tech engineers into the market from NorthCoders now. So we're making a big contribution.
Hi, I'm Ayesha Caine. I'm a director at RES in cybersecurity, so that's Renewable Energy Systems. I just started there actually about a month ago, and I'm heading up their mergers and acquisitions team. We've just brought on 1,800 new employees, and I'm helping build their security strategy and to migrate their systems over.
Fantastic. No, thanks so much for giving it a brief introduction. So we'll jump straight into the questions now, if that's okay. So I've asked everyone to prepare a question that we're going to ask the other panelists. So Sam, he wants to know from both you, Ayesha, and Afqad, in your own experience, do you think being a member of the LGBTQ community is related to imposter syndrome? Ayesha, do you want to start?
Yes, definitely. I think when you spend a lot of your life hiding behind doors and who you are, I believe that's accompanied by an uncertainty of yourself. You're so busy pretending you're something else that, for me at least, actually figuring out who I was came a little later. I spent a lot of time trying to find groups within the industry where I fitted in without really knowing who I was. I think when you come from a background where you're naturally an outsider, then that can go hand in hand with imposter syndrome. You're always told that you need to fit in, and when you don't, you're doing things the wrong way, and it's impossible to feel like you don't belong.
No, that's honestly so true. Afqad?
Yes, for myself, the journey I have been on, so I am fortunate enough to be working for the employer who really helped me in my journey. And how my journey has been defined is that it's never been easy for me. As you can imagine, I'm British by naturalization, came from a Muslim country, came from Pakistan, very happily married now. But the industry I work in the electrical industry, and you can imagine, you go to sites, you go to wind farms, you go to power stations and stuff, and you deal with people, and I'm not saying that they have any malicious intentions at all. You deal with people, the first question is that, good morning, mate, how's the missus? How are the kids? And you go along this journey that you feel like, if I say something, am I going to be, different? Am I going to be outcasted? Are they going to work with me? Is this a very major customer going to bring any business towards me? So I'm representing various hats. And it used to be, yeah, Mrs. is fine. Or the football talk, I'm not particularly a fan of football. So little things like that, and that carried on. So imposter syndrome always kicked in. You basically try to play along. But now, what I feel is that you have to be there are different parts of it. Yes, there are different people, but majority of the people is about experience, education, and transparency. You tell people who you are, and we take it from there. But it's not always the case. So starting from the very fact that yes, it affects people, you start doubting yourself, you start looking out there and see that for my particular case is, okay, I'm a gay man, I'm a gay Muslim man. Do I have anyone out there as a role model who represent myself or understand who I am? Or if I put myself out there, will it be good for me? Or I'm pushing myself in my professional career. So yeah, it has been a challenge, but with the right people in my life, both personally my husband and with my mentors and now with my line manager, I think I have come over that and now I feel it's my responsibility to help others.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Afqad. I think it goes back to that like visibility piece. I think when boards and stuff have so many senior white men on them, other white men think, oh, I can do that. I can be that person. However, people who don't have necessarily such an easier life, they have other struggles that maybe they can see or maybe they can't see. They don't necessarily see someone up there. They think, well, is there any point trying? I think that goes back to just trying to make more diverse boards, make other people believe that they can obviously achieve. So Sam, Afqad wants to know from you, what strategies have you found effective, or how do you provide support for LGBTQ members in the current hybrid working environment?
Cool, thank you very much. So I will be honest here and say that like the transition to hybrid basically came with COVID. It was never planned. It was kind of a bit like everybody else. We sort of woke up one day and we had to completely pivot our business model. And it came with some real upsides, some very inclusive upsides, like flexible working, like allowing our students to work from further afield. So we're now all over the UK rather than just in Manchester and Leeds. And but there were some downsides as well. And I think that when you're kind of a small, very intimate, closely knit team, everybody knows everybody. There's the kind of informal nature to how the day-to-day plays out. And as a result, issues like feeling like you are siloed or out on your own get dealt with much more quickly because everyone's in the office together, you're bumping shoulders to it, you make tea next to each other, and all of those sorts of things. All of those informal relationships kind of immediately fractured. And I think probably a lot of other people have found themselves in this situation where actually you didn't realise that until that point, that was pretty integral to how you did your work. And so in general, we had to formalise a lot of those things that were informal previously, like setting up community teams, setting up welfare teams, and making sure that people have channels to have democratised conversations as a workforce as well. But what was interesting when I was thinking about this question particularly, because there was an emphasis on LGBTQ plus people, was that at NorthCoders it's not ever something I've ever really considered, like what's the difference for LGBTQ plus people? Because I think it's kind of in our DNA that you are accepted at NorthCoders and everybody's treated kind of fairly regardless of their background. And so when we started, we were a very small team, now we're quite a big one, and all of the kind of grassroots initiatives that we see from that team, like there's a queer coded podcast, for example, which I've also been a guest on. Sorry, this is not my first time. That came from our staff, like wanting to champion those voices and put them in front of the industry and say, this is what like a queer in tech experience looks like. And that's not been driven by top-down initiatives. It's just people feel like they can be out there and proud and exist as themselves within the organisation. So we haven't had to put LGBT people in particular at the forefront because it's kind of always been an underlying principle of us as an organisation. So I felt when I was reading the question, I feel really lucky about that, like, and really privileged to be in an organisation like that.
No, I really appreciate that. But what is it, do you reckon, about NorthCoders that is like that, that makes it like that? Do you think it's because you've got people like yourself in leadership positions, people can kind of understand that? It's not like so out of their reach?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's really interesting because I wasn't always in a leadership position. I joined as an educator at NorthCoders, and it was the first place where I ever felt like I could be out on day one. Like I had nothing to hide on day one, and I feel a bit like Afqad's experience. Like you just kind of go along with it. You just kind of like, fine, yeah. I've got a girlfriend, whatever. I'm not that convincing. So the people at NorthCoders have always been really accepting, and I think that having somebody in a position like myself, and I used to lead the kind of education team, then the tech team, and I've kind of progressed with the company as we've grown. I hopefully have helped and been a positive role model, but everybody was accepting from day one, and I think because it was such a startup when I joined, it's easier to kind of foster it in a very small, very controlled environment, I think, and then at that point have a board which steps forward and champions diversity. It's easier with this less massive culture to overcome.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. So Ayesha, to your experience and knowledge, do you believe imposter syndrome is more common amongst LGBTQ members from ethnic minorities? And if so, what can be done to overcome this challenge?
Well, yeah, I definitely think that is the case. I think, yeah, I mean, being from an ethnic minority and also being gay, it definitely, it definitely adds pressure because, you're going to work, you're trying to do your best, make friends, allies, you're trying to get noticed, but for the right things, and not like for being gay or brown or, whatever that might be. And yeah, so I think it just adds another layer. But yeah, even if you're a woman or you're neurodivergent, I think, all those things do add layers as well. And especially with the ethnic minority and maybe coming from so for me, from a mixed, predominantly Asian culture as well, there are basically cultural things that is expected as well. And then so you're going into the workplace, you've got all of that pressure, and then you have to fit into a box, I guess. And then yeah, I think there's definitely times when I feel like I'm being pushed. Being pushed to think that I don't deserve to be here, or this isn't the right fit for me. Us outsiders, we all have to work 100 times harder.
Completely.
Yeah. And so even with all the confidence in the world, you can still enter workplace situations and have that knocked away from you. My experience, unfortunately, is that a lot of people have been waiting to knock someone like me, down. And after a while, the more you get knocked down, your resilience wears down, and you start to question if you're actually good enough. So, for me, to overcome this, I would say it's kind of twofold. We need to make an effort to increase diversity across the board. But I actually think this kind of comes from the top down. And we're always focused on trying to increase people to join STEM subjects in school and university, and we get this massive pool of talent, but then we fail them later on. So we're not nurturing them when we get them in the workplace, really.
Yeah, no, completely.
Yeah.
I think how it's places like employee resource groups and stuff like that can help people bring their authentic self to work. And I think lots of studies and stuff have shown how people who feel comfortable at work to be able to share their full authentic selves and can basically obviously help them. It helps the bottom line. Do you know, it actually does have a financial impact on businesses if you get people who can obviously be their authentic selves.
Yeah. No, I just one
so-
more thing, yeah. So secondly, well, lastly, we need to call out bad behaviour. So at all levels. So that requires having the ability to like speak up and speak about actions within the workplace and not fearing that you're going to get into trouble and, you know, calling things out when something isn't right.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important as well. I think we can get siloed and not wanting, if you want to progress and go further in your career, you can think, oh, I can't actually talk about this and say that actually made me feel uncomfortable, because for them it isn't uncomfortable. They don't have these struggles that they go with. They're like, well, why are you complaining? But being able to actually educate people, and say everyone here, I assume, are allies and quite forward thinking, but not everyone is, and it's educating them to get past that barrier. No, thanks so much. So Ayesha actually wants to ask Afqad, despite society valuing authenticity, marginalised groups still face exclusion. How can we redefine concepts of success and leadership to embrace diverse identities?
I would like to focus on a few points over here. Thanks for a very good question, Ayesha, because I think I encounter these questions often and I still learn from these. I would like to take you to the very first point why we're sitting over here. We're sitting over here because we talked about diversity. So DEI, so we said diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you cast your mind back approximately 5-6 years ago, it wasn't equity at that time. It was diversity, equality, and inclusion. Why we change equality to equity? Why we change equality to equity is that I'm going to give you a little example to understand what exactly equity is. For example, you have 3 people. You have a tall person, a medium-height person, and a short person. They're standing against the wall and they're trying to, let's say, watch a game or anything. How can they see? So equality actually meant you provide a step ladder to all of them and basically see that they can see across what is happening across the fence. The tall person can still see. The medium-height person can now see. The short-heighted person still cannot see. So equality is basically about giving equal opportunities. Equity basically means the tall person doesn't need a step ladder. The medium-height person probably needs a step ladder, and the short-heighted person needs probably another bigger ladder, so they can all see. And if I try to resonate it back to what we can do within the community, is to take those small equitable measures to basically help people in their journey. I'm going to ask, we've been asked to write our pronouns over here, and often there is a discussion around various employers, various levels of leadership, and say that I do not need to put my pronouns. I look like a man or I look like a woman. It's not for you. Let me be very clear. These pronouns are not for you. These pronouns are basically to help the people from the LGBTQ plus community to say that this is an indication that I am an ally. Come and talk to me if you need anything. This is a very, very small gesture and a kind and a polite gesture, say that I'm here for you. Small equitable steps to help people. Go a further step back. I'm not going to talk about being a gay man. Let's talk about trans community. People who are transitioning, you're sending them to site. Have we thought about when sending people to site, what are the smallest things we are considering to help them? Very basic thing. Do they have the right toilets to use while they're on site? Do their safety gear help them to perform the job perfectly? Do they feel included into the community they're going to go? So very, very simple steps. Put yourself in others' shoes and see how would you feel if you would have been in those situations. So yes, there are challenges. What we need to do is that, and I often say to people when we do little talks, and we have these called as lunch and learn sessions or coffee sessions and stuff. And people often say that, who should we look up to? We don't have any role models. And I said, yes, we don't, but you are the role model. Be the next role model. You are the future. In Siemens, you are the next CEO of Siemens. So let's drive that. And not to forget, I often talk about go beyond that, talk about intersectionality, because you know what? I'm a gay man, but being gay does not define me who I am. There are so many other aspects of who I am. Because if you talk about the leadership, talk about authenticity, and talk about how can we be included, there are so many other challenges. I often say, as a part of Siemens, we have been encouraged to be ourselves and go and represent ourselves and be ourselves. But what happens is that a person whose first language or mother tongue is not English, you often see, oh, I'm going to sit in front of these people. Am I pronouncing this word correctly? Is my grammar correct if I'm going to put it on? Oh, I'll be judged. Shall I just stay quiet or shall I do something? No. My request to all is that from both parts of it, the people who are going through this, try it, make a mistake. Making a mistake makes you a more human being. People on the other side of it, remember, this is how we learn, support each other.
Thanks so much, Afqad. That's a lot of good points there. I'm still going back to the analogy of the ladder. I think that's such an interesting way to see it, because I think a lot of stale, male and pale people, sorry, if anyone is stale, male and pale, I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily can't visualize what it's like. I think that kind of puts it into a bit more context. It's a bit like a visual, if that makes sense. So thanks so much. So last question was for you, Sam. What's your viewpoint on redefining concepts of success and leadership to embrace diverse identities, but also how can we also help LGBTQ people leaders overcome imposter syndrome?
Sure, this is a big question, I think, so I'm grateful for it. It's the one I've had to think about the most, I think, because I guess from my perspective, like the definition of success is, my definition of success is one that I've sort of made up for myself, and I haven't followed a route that certainly that my parents wanted, and I have carved out a path of my own, which has been very weird and very long and odd, and got me into a position where I'm happy, and I feel like the work that I'm doing every day is, obviously I'm in a good position, but the work that I'm doing, more importantly, is extremely rewarding. I feel like I'm doing a good thing for civilization. That might be a bit lofty. Set your sights high. And so I think that that's how I always defined it. And earlier in my career, I had success that I think my parents would have looked more favourably upon, and but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't feel like I was doing anything particularly noble, and that's why I kind of changed careers and went into tech. And so I guess how do we define success as a society? Do we reward just, is it just economic? Do we literally measure ourselves up against each other's pay packets? Is that how it works, or is it like the value of the work that we do? And I think that I've been considering this a lot recently, and obviously the budget was yesterday, and I'm not getting too political, but I think that like the success, like defining it from the perspective of like doing something noble, is almost a luxury at the moment, and I worry about that. That like there are people who, like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like self-actualization is at the top for a reason, and there are people who are working today in society who do 3 jobs, and for them success is just getting through to the end of the week and feeding everybody in the house. And I think that, like, for me, like championing like ways into the industry for people from backgrounds who wouldn't have traditionally been able to get there, which is what NorthCoders does, that's our modus operandi, is kind of contributing to that sea change, hopefully. Like we train a lot of people and get them into companies, and I hope that that is how I'm kind of leading on that front. But I guess the thing that I would say, that if you are in the position to define success in a way that kind of rings with your soul in a more positive way, then you should take that. Right? You should lean into that, because I cannot say how much richer my life is for doing something that I feel is honourable and valuable. And a lot of people are afraid to make those sorts of changes, I think, because it comes with risk, it comes with a sacrifice of your identity, which you build around yourself as you kind of get into a career and talk to your friends and post on your Instagram about who you are. And I think that, yeah, if you can do something that you think is better and better for everybody, that you should do that, and that's how you should lead positively.
Thanks so much for that. No, I really agree as well. I think it's quite clear you're very passionate about that as well. So that comes to the end of the podcast for now.